And welcome. It's Monday morning, 1:03. A little bit late today. When we have a different setup, it takes a little longer to set up. So thank you for your patience, and hope we can provide you some information today on how to keep safe. Over the weekend, we had a couple of situations. One being the woman who walked into, I believe it was in Texas, walked into a home and was attacked by a pit bull. And then we had a comment, I believe it was this morning, on our Facebook Connect page about video cameras in homes, audio equipment in homes that you're showing, and what the appropriate protocol is. And we'll talk more about that too, along the lines of what's appropriate and not appropriate to have conversations about when you're showing a home. A lot of these things that I'm going to mention are very simple ideas, but some of them are more complex, and that's why I asked to have Ron Tiller here, who is certified as a trainer, instructor for
concealed pistol licensing.
For concealed pistol licensing. I wanted to make sure that that we got that right for you. So he's a CPL trainer, works as a realtor for 5-Star as well. And I know Ron puts on classes. Is it like every month, or?
We do typically about 3 a month. We train somewhere in the vicinity between 50 and 60 people a month, many of whom are real estate agents.
Okay. Just curiosity, and to start off, I want to ask you a couple of questions. If you had to guess, let's just say if I had to guess.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Out of 3,000, let's just use the roundish number of 3,000 realtors, how many do you think would be carrying a firearm?
Be for men between 20 and 25%, and women probably around the 16 to 20%. Nationwide, it's 15 and 25. I'd like to see those numbers reversed. I'd rather see more women carrying. If we armed all the women, the men would behave, we'd have peace on earth.
Well, their case could be made for that. Anyway, we also were talking, you and I, a little bit before we started, about the differences between Florida law and Michigan law. As an example, Florida law has the stand your ground law. And as we were talking, you mentioned the differences between the licensing in Florida and the manner in which you can carry in Florida versus Michigan. Could you explain that to our folks visiting?
Certainly. We both have stand your ground laws, which means you no longer have to turn your back on someone that's trying to take you out. You are allowed to defend yourself. One of the bigger differences between us and Florida, because we all go there, is in Florida they don't have what's called open carry, whereas in Michigan we do. In Michigan, you can walk down the street with a firearm on your hip as long as it's not concealed. You can't be in your vehicle with it. That way it has to be properly transported. With the concealed pistol license, if nothing else, it's a great convenience because you don't have to jump through so many hoops just to be able to protect yourself out in public.
But even with a CPL, and I want to mention that even with a CPL in Michigan, you can open carry.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But where are the places that you cannot carry?
In Michigan?
Yes.
Federal facilities are a biggie because they're, of course, and they're controlled by federal law. Casinos, at least those that are controlled by the Indians, they have their own police forces and rules. Churches, unless you have permission from the leadership, whether it be a priest or a board of deacons or elders or whatever. Schools right now, every school has its ability to make its own decisions. Safest thing is just don't. There are other places that firearms are not allowed, many of which you can if you have a concealed pistol license. Otherwise, you cannot. There's quite a list.
Thank you, and we're going to come back to that. But for now, I want to back up to some of the more simple ways to keep yourself safe. I think Ron and I would both agree that firearm is the last resort. We're talking about taking someone's life or causing great bodily harm, and that has to be the very last resort. There are a lot of things that we can do as real estate agents, and some are doing, others are not. We're going to wait just a minute while Dom gets the camera all set.
Right. They can still hear you, but
All right, we good? Anyway, we're moving on.
Yes.
So listen until you see our lovely faces again, and don't laugh. All right. So anyway, I want to go to some of the simpler issues, simpler methods. I carry this little gizmo. It's called a Wear Safe. I don't know how many of you have them out there, but if I walk into a house to show it and something looks wrong to me, I have the ability to press this button and it will send out a warning.
Right.
The reality is, having grown up in a fairly tough neighborhood, that sometimes they can't get to you by the time something happens. So again, that's kind of a last resort. And if you want to call it sort of a Hail Mary pass, it may be too late by then. So I want to back up even further to things like forewarn. I know that many of our agents have checked forewarn before they go out and show a property. And it's a great tool. I encourage all of you to access forewarn if you are meeting with a client that you have never met before. I don't care who it is. You should always check. I'll give you one even better. Always meet with them first. I make it a policy that I never, ever go out with a client who I have not met with, a buyer who I've not met with first. And if I don't know them, I don't go show them houses. It's that simple, because no commission is worth my life. No commission is worth bumps and bruises, frankly. So I don't do it. I have them come into the office. It's what I call CETO. It's part of my personal real estate policy. Come into the office. Come in, and I will take a copy of your driver's license or your permanent ID number, your photo ID, and I will have it in my file. And then I'm going to make sure that I let everybody in my office know who I am going out to show houses with, when I'll be there, when I'll be back, and sometimes even tell them, give me a call at 2 o'clock, for example, and I will have a conversation with you on the phone just so that you know that I'm safe. There are a lot of things we can do before we ever get into that car to go show a house to ensure our safety, or at least minimize the risks. I always encourage people who feel as if they might be in danger to take someone with them, and preferably someone who has a CPL, frankly. We have had situations in the Standale office, for example, and other offices, where we have felt a need to lock down the office. I'm not going to go into that, other than to say that when we find ourselves in those kind of positions, we take every precaution as fast as we can to ensure that our staff and agents are safe. Again, we had one situation a few years ago where we had to lock down all of the offices because of a threat. And we will do that in a heartbeat if we feel as our agents are being endangered. So think about that for yourself. Make sure that before you go out and put yourself at risk, that you have done everything you possibly can to make sure that no harm is going to come to you. I've heard of agents, and if Brian Cribbs, if you're listening in with your background, I'd love to hear some of your comments and thoughts. Not to put you on the spot, but I just did, so there. Get a copy of their driver's license, have your team member or administrator of the office, branch administrator, somebody put it in a file so that they know who you're showing properties to. It may not prevent something, but there's a very strong likelihood it will, because that person knows how easily tracked they will be if they've already given you their driver's license information. They also have these things on the backs of cars called driver's license plates, car plates. If I have somebody that drives up and I haven't met them, again, personally, I don't ever meet people I don't know. But I know of other agents who have taken a picture of the car plate as they've driven up to take a look at the house. Somebody who is holding an open house and they have car after car pulling into the driveway actually may set up a camera to take pictures of the car plates as they drive up to the house. All of these things are for your thoughts about how to stay safe. Again, as my daughters were growing up, I told them, always pay close attention to the hair on the backs of your necks. If the hair stands up, there's probably something wrong. And always be aware of your surroundings. Don't become so engrossed in your phone or what you're doing, whether it's picking up open house signs after the open house or whatever. Always maintain a heightened level of awareness about what's happening around you. Again, being aware, keeping that as your safety first, is really the most important thing, more than carrying pepper spray or an air horn or a gun or any of those kinds of things. Being aware of your safety and doing things to prevent something from happening is far more effective than just carrying a weapon. So, do we have any questions yet?
Not yet.
Okay. So what else do we call here? Oh, another thing is always be careful about going into remote areas of the home, the basement. I mean, if you add up the crimes that have been committed against real estate agents, many of them have occurred in the basement. So don't go there. If I'm going to show a house and I don't know this person, I'm not going to walk into the basement or upstairs or out in the garage with them. Are you protecting that property? Probably not. So again, you have to ask yourself, what's really important? My well-being or showing this property? I'm going to always choose my well-being. So, Ron, thoughts?
Well, thoughts on number one, you talked about the Wear Safe, and that's a great tool. It can tell people where to send the ambulance or the coroner. Unfortunately, it won't do anything to stop a crime. That's
absolutely right.
The sad thing about it. What Don alluded to was trusting your instincts. Trust your gut. If something doesn't look right or feel right, it probably isn't. We have a saying in the industry that's JDLR, just don't look right. If it doesn't, trust it.
Yes, and I've heard that with from law enforcement officers. Well, it just don't look right.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't look right or feel right, I believe you have a sixth sense that picks up on vibrations, emotions, something that warns you of danger.
Right.
And that's that same kind of sense, that same kind of heightened sensory connection that dogs have, that they can pick up on a danger or a threat to themselves or a threat to the property that they're protecting. Very territorial. And maybe what happened in that situation in Texas is the dog picked up on a perfume or a smell or something that was threatening to the dog, something that maybe the dog experienced in As a puppy, we don't know. What I will tell you is this: I never walk into a house that has a dog unless it is in a cage, in a kennel. If they say, "Oh no, the dog's fine," I say, "Oh no, no dog is fine. I don't care how nice little Fluffy is. Little Fluffy is going to bite if he or she senses danger." And dogs have a very heightened sense of danger. So I never walk into a house that has a dog that's not in a kennel or removed entirely from the house. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree. I was showing a vacant home, a foreclosure once. Open the door and be alert when you're in the house if something doesn't look right, out of place. On the counter, there was a quart milk carton opened. Well, we know that those homes are always cleaned out before they're put on the market. That is when the hairs, and it happens every time I talk about it, the hairs on the back of my neck stood right up. I got that chill, and I pushed my client, who was behind me, out the door, and we went and bought a different house on Heritage Hill, thank you. And there was a pit bull that came around the corner and charged.
Yeah, and that can happen quickly. More on safety, and in this sense, I'm not talking about violence or senses of danger. I've had situations where I've been asked to show houses that were in bulldozer condition. We'll just call it that. And they are frankly dangerous. They were frankly dangerous to enter. As I opened one, there was moss growing on the living room floor, and I pushed on the living room floor with my foot, and it bowed. And I backed up, locked the door, and I said to the buyer, "I'm sorry, but I can't show you this house." And they said, no, we'll be careful. I said, no, you don't understand. I'm not walking in the house, and I'm not letting you walk in the house. If you want to buy the house from somebody, there's a bunch of other realtors that might show you the house, but it won't be me, because my life, my well-being is far more important than any commission check. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree. Your safety is utmost. And if you don't go home at the end of the day, there's someone waiting for you, they're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah. We've got kids, spouses, families, kids, this is they are the most important things to all of us, and we have to protect ourselves for that. Interesting question that came up on Facebook this morning. I'm glad that it came up, because it's an issue that we get questions on quite frequently, and have gone to our attorney for clarification on it. If you walk into a house and the seller is recording, is that illegal? And the answer is absolutely not. The seller has a right to record anything in their house. It's their home. Now, that's what the law says. But the courts have refined it just a bit and says that if the buyers have a reasonable expectation of privacy, you cannot record there. For example, the bathroom. Questionable whether or not the bedroom would follow as well. I doubt it. I think it really would be, and I'm not an attorney, but I think that it would probably be limited to the bathroom, but they gave a sort of global explanation as any area that you would expect, have a reasonable expectation of privacy. So my caution to everyone is always be careful about what you're saying, because there's a very strong likelihood nowadays that people have cameras in their homes. I had cause to put cameras in my homes and in my home, and so I just see that as kind of a normal thing in today's world, that people are going to get Ring doorbells. They're going to have cameras inside their homes, and just be very, very careful. If you want to talk privately about the house, before you go in, say to them, there may be cameras, there may be recording devices. Let's keep our conversation outside the house, down the street. We'll go down to the Burger King or whatever and have a conversation. So that's my thought for today. Anything that you have to add as far as CPL or thoughts about safety?
No, well, yes, you don't have to carry a firearm just because you have a CPL. In Michigan, if you wanted to carry something non-lethal like a taser, you must have a concealed pistol license to do so. How they got the two connected, I don't know. Stun guns, the ones that are direct contact, are illegal currently in Michigan. I know some realtors have them, and I hope they never have to use them because it could cause a problem. The pepper spray that Don mentioned is pretty good. Pepper gel is a little bit better, and then it won't blow back in your face if you're out in windy conditions. I've heard of people carrying wasp and hornet spray, which is kind of bulky, but it certainly would be nasty if sprayed in the face. Track shoes would be great. Run like the wind.
Yes.
Run, Forrest,
yes,
run.
Yes, when in doubt, run. Well, thank you, Ron, for joining us. I hope this has been helpful. Any questions we got up, down, or not?
Brian Cribbs made a comment just when you called him out. He just wrote a comment about some things. I put it in your doc if you want to read it.
I want to look at that before I sign off here. And the internet's down.
Oh, really?
Are we still live streaming?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Joe.
Read the question if you will.
It's pretty long. So, all right. So Brian Cribbs, everything you said is spot on. This was from earlier when you called him out. He said, "Trust your gut. Try not to allow the person to put themselves between you and the door. Always have a plan in mind if something goes wrong. Role play scenarios in your mind so that you're prepared for the worst case scenarios. I try to be available to accompany any agents on a showing or meeting if they feel uncomfortable and can't get someone to go along with them. This is a great conversation to have, Ron and Don, and safety can't be emphasized enough."
Well, thanks, Brian, and I appreciate your input because it reminded me of some of the basics, which is never allow them to get between you and the doors. Simple street smarts that come second nature to some people, but to others they don't. So thank you so much for joining the conversation, Brian. Again, thank you, Ron. I appreciate you joining us. I hope it's been
Enjoyed it.
helpful, and we'll see you here next week.